they might go from calling someone a conspiracy theorist to evil, is when you say, well, that proves that Charlie's team was in on it, in that, they let it happen.
Nothing
as
proves
opposed to
anything. In my world, nothing proves anything here. Okay?
Right.
What it does is gives you a signal. Something odd happened with roofs. If Charlie's crack security team did not check up on the, hey, what do you mean the roofs are covered? In what way are they covered? Are all of them covered?
But I appreciate, at the end of the day, like when you talk about the crime scene, being chaotic, it is, at the end of the day, these are humans who are more or less confident. I operate on the premise that security is the illusion of safety, but you're dealing with people, and you're dealing with people who, they make stupid decisions, and they're like, oh, okay, you got it covered, no problem. Oh, what's that? That roof is covered.
I don't think so. If somebody in the crowd had shot him, then we would be saying, well, okay, you can imagine that you either have to do one of two things. You either have to cordon off the area and only allow people in with a metal detector, and here's why they decided not to do that, because it's too cumbersome to do that at every event, and so the decision was made to take that risk and to keep your eye out for somebody with a weapon. Not covering roofs, it's not that hard to cover them, right? It takes a few people. B, it's an obvious vulnerability. C, if it wasn't obvious how obvious a vulnerability it is, then it sure was after Butler. And so,
100%.
Look, somebody should have been fired because it was their job, whether it was their job to make sure that the campus police or the city police had the roofs covered. If you're on security, you're not looking for, well, that's somebody else's problem if Charlie Kirk gets shot because they told me they have the roofs covered. The point is, it's my job to figure out whether the people who are in charge of that thing are doing it correctly.
There's the old, I don't like the expression, but it's one that people say, so some women would rather be raped than rude, and so they don't want to say no to somebody, and then they put themselves in a vulnerable position, and they end up getting assaulted. And had they just had the initial reflex to say, I'm going to trust my gut and be rude to this person and not roll down the window, not open the door, not let them get in the elevator, why didn't I listen to that? This is where I'd say I have zero doubt that Charlie Kirk's security team they feel responsible. In that they say, okay, well, the police told me that they got the roof covered, and they say we can't fly our drones because of whatever, and I don't want to be rude and call them stupid and make them look like I don't trust them, and so we've done it 100 times, and we've done it 100 times without an incident. We'll just go with it, and then it happens, and now they're going to live with this for the rest of their lives. And by the way, allowing that roof to be accessible, A, undermines the exploding microphone theory, and B, does emphasize a potential collusion. Like maybe there were activists at the university who didn't like Charlie and what he stood for, and say, well, we'll leave that roof open, and 1 in 100 times something will happen.
Right, but that is where the lack of an FBI comes into play.
1,000%. But that's where I just also don't have that's where saying that it's negligence on the security team, which I think most people will agree with, versus saying they were in on it from the beginning, it goes from conspiracy to evil accusations. Like, whether or not you think it's negligent, and I'm sure they, in retrospect, think it's negligent, whether or not they should have gotten fired instead of promoted, whatever, to say that it's negligence versus they let it happen on purpose because they wanted to kill Charlie is where you go from imputing negligence to imputing ill intent, and that's where people can say that's no longer just asking questions, that's making the most insidious accusations and entering into the realm of evil.
Well, can I just say that their behavior is unbelievably suspicious. In fact, if you listen to the Brian Harpole on Sean Ryan's, he said that they weren't allowed to have drone coverage. But if you listen to Frank Turk, he said, I'm watching the drone coverage on my phone. So,
but there was a conventional explanation that, whether or not you believe it, that they were told. My understanding, it was during the event you couldn't have drones, but you can get promotional material beforehand. That's my understanding, and I might be wrong. And again, I'm sure. Yeah.
No, and then why wouldn't his security team allow an actual EMT person, which was standing right outside the SUV, to get in the SUV? They didn't allow them. They had Brian Harpo doing medical, and Brian, and I don't know about you, but Brian Harpo comes off to me like a complete bullshitting used car salesman making stuff up as he goes, and the fact that he didn't have he's the head of security. He didn't have an ambulance there. They didn't allow the EMTs inside, and then he lied about it. He lied that they were too scared to come help. They're standing right there if you look at the video, and then he cuts the T-shirt off. He goes in and starts talking to the doctors about what kind of drugs do you. That guy is completely unreliable and completely suspect. So I have no problem saying Brian Hartpole is completely suspect and should be a target of this investigation, and he's not.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we know that he wasn't a target initially, but suspect of egregious incompetence is one thing. Suspect of active involvement in the planning or allowing to happen is something entirely different. I have zero doubt after he gets murdered under their security watch, he'll be in full cover-up mode to make it look like it wasn't their responsibility, that it wasn't their negligence, and you know the thing about and not having an ambulance at an event. Forget Charlie Kirk, at an event with 3,000 people in the middle of summer itself is negligence. But negligence because of human incompetence, which if you scrutinized any crime scene ever in the history of whatever, you would find these types of elements, evidence of human incompetence, is far different than that which is required to substantiate some of these conspiracy theories that have been floated around. But I again, it is zero problem saying it's wildly not just suspicious, inconceivable that they would not cover that roof after what happened at Butler.
And so the reason why they could have, so you say that the fact that they didn't cover the roof negates the exploding microphone. I would say that would be them, that this is what we're going to use, that someone didn't hear, so let's not cover it, because that's going to be our story. And even though we're actually going to do it in a different way. So that would make sense, because they would need a story, and the story was, oh, the roof wasn't covered, and that's where the shot was taken. And and again, you go back to Joe Kent, the fact that he was stopped by the head of the FBI, who has no interest in investigating this. He stopped someone who wanted to, who was at the tippy top of government investigating stuff like this, proves that there is a cover-up happening.
Well, hold on. The thing you said right before that,
they would leave the roof open.
Well, no, but
on purpose, just as you said before, they would want to have a story.
No, but the reality is, the day of, we were all watching virtually live. People turned their heads to the roof. There was a noise that came from the roof, and now if the argument's going to be, it was a noise as the decoy to distract from the fact that there was an exploding microphone, you're getting into levels of not just complexity, but implausibility that defy any reason. If all they ever had to do was have someone on a roof to take the shot. When it comes to Joe Kent, and this is, go for it, Jimmy.
No, but there was there's been reports that there was another shooter, that people had seen another person on another building, and they also found a bullet on another building. And then they also, so there's that.
And to just, first of all, there's always, and I'm not trying to be glib or facetious, there's always another those things of another shooter. There was another one at Butler where they said there was another guy on the tower, the water tower further down. There's always people saying there were more than one shooters because people are hearing bullets echo. Sometimes there is more than one shooter.
There was a bullet found.
And it was a different type of bullet. And this is where people say they don't believe the conventional explanation, that it somehow fell off or out of a cop's gun. I forget who it was.
Yeah.
No, and I appreciate people. It's like, that's ridiculous. That never happens. They're like, the cop who shot Ashley Bird forgot his gun in the bathroom at the Capitol building when he went to the bathroom. So cops do, again, they do stupid things. But then even if you say like, okay, that is weird, where do you go from there? So it was then a different round of a bullet from a different roof, even though you don't have that angle.
Different round.
I think it was a 223. If my memory is correct, that it was a 223 round, which is what police typically use, found on the roof of another building, not the Losey building.
Unfired, if I'm
unfired.
correct.
It was an entire whole bullet. And a guy named Kyle Seraphin, who's an ex-FBI, he explained that cops do a lot of stupid things. Sometimes, it literally falls out if you drop your whatever. There's 1,000 reasons or possibilities. But then you just say, even if it is weird, how does it fit into the theory?
Hold on. Let's put that aside for a moment. I want to talk a little bit about the 30-06 hypothesis of the crime here. I think we fall into... There's a thing, I'll try to recreate it, called I think it's the prosecutor's fallacy. And basically it looks like this. A person, their DNA matches the DNA on a weapon that has been used in a murder. And the prosecutor says the chances of this DNA matching are 1,000,000 to 1. And the person is convicted. The problem is, if there's no other evidence that the person committed the crime, then the fact that you found a person whose DNA matches the weapon means nothing, because there are people in the population for whom it will match. On the other hand, if the person is seen running from the crime, and then you take their DNA and it matches, then the chances are 1 in 1,000,000 that the chances of the person seen running from the crime would happen to match the DNA found on the weapon, etc. So I want to point to an analogous problem. We have a shot that many people have tried to recreate and failed. The 30-06 that leaves an entrance wound and no exit wound, shot at that angle into Charlie, has been very difficult for anybody to recreate, which raises a question. Now, the answer to that question is typically given, hey, bullets do odd things. I agree, they do. But they don't usually do odd things. And I think the way to look at this is, oh no, we've had a tremendously impactful political assassination from a single shot. I wonder if the ballistics on this one are going to end up inconclusive and or magic bullet-like, right?
Troy Jackson. While his family cashed in, you paid the price. Troy Jackson voted to allow cities and towns to drastically raise your property taxes. And Jackson supports raising taxes on your Social Security. We can't afford Troy Jackson in the Senate.
They say higher education is outdated, irrelevant. But at Grand Canyon University, we shatter the status quo. GCU's bachelor's, master's, and doctoral education degree programs combine coursework with observational education.
GCU gives you hands-on experience so you can learn to lead your classroom with heart, faith, and purpose.
This is purpose-driven education. Take action. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu.
That the bullet is going to have done things that, yeah, maybe occasionally a bullet does, but what are the chances in this case that you would have a bullet behaving in an extremely unusual way, breaking up in an unusual way, not leaving an exit wound, etc.? So I must tell you, of the pieces of evidence that I think are strongest, is that the shot in question is exceedingly unlikely to have created the pattern of evidence that has been recovered from the body. So what does that mean? That's the question as far as I'm concerned. The 30-06, maybe there's some 1 in 10,000 chance of the bullet having behaved in a, almost unprecedented way that nobody can manage to recreate no matter how many times they try. But if you were going to ask me at the moment of the crime, right, okay, Charlie Kirk has just been shot, there was a single shot fired, I should have said at that point, I predict the ballistics will be anomalous, right? That is an interesting pattern to me. So then there's the question, okay, so people go from 30-06 didn't do this to exploding Mike. I think that's an error on their part. I think actually, I'm fond of Chris Martinson's analysis that says that the trajectory of the shot is wrong.
Yes.
That's highly likely, and
Yes.
that maybe it wasn't a 30-06, that it was fired at a much steeper angle.
Yes, like from a drone.
Well, and this is the thing, we are
John
not
Cohen
talking...
has evidence of drones flying over that.
Right. And so I don't understand why we're not having a broader conversation about this. Not only do you have drones that do not appear to be like consumer drones flying over the event. These appear to be very expensive, sophisticated drones. But you also have a known weapon system that involves armable drones and the ability to deploy them from an aerial platform where you have an aerial platform, for whatever reason, behaving anomalously over the lake adjacent to UVU. I'm not saying I'm no expert in this, but it does strike me that the right thing to be doing, like were we to have an FBI and were they to be actually interested in solving this crime, that they would be interested in the question of, okay, here's one for you. We all agree that there were drones. In fact, I think in the preliminary hearing, the drones were even acknowledged. There were drones. What did they see? Maybe they have better images of people on the roofs. We could tell whether it was Tyler Robinson on the roof or not, right? But instead, it's like drones are barely mentioned, if at all. The specialness of these drones is not discussed.
I'm not sure the drone stuff is. I don't want to I'm not sure that the drones, non-media or involved drones were flying in the air. So I'm not sure that that's.
Wait. What aren't you sure of?
That there were other drones in the sky. I'm just checking as we're going.
Other than
no, like just the answer is. I mean, just summary Google search. No reports of drones, of any non-media drones, security, police, private, flying over Utah Valley the day Charlie Kirk was killed.
Okay, so
I'm not sure about that. But
so David, what would it do to your perspective if you saw compelling evidence that there were drones in the air at the moment of Charlie's?
Well, I mean, what type? I mean, again, it'll be what type of drones? DJI Phantoms?
How about drones
Military.
that exceed the capacity of consumer drones?
Well, it would be relevant if it was anything other than. If it was anything that could reasonably fire a weapon. I mean, you have drones that can hold DSLR cameras, and they're there for production purposes.
Drones exist and are for sale today, if my understanding is correct, that can fire.
I see. There was the guy got in trouble because he posted a video of him. He managed to hook up a gun to.
This isn't a managed. This is
I know this is
military weaponry that will hold. I think it's a 7.62 firing weapon, a rifle, which I'm not saying that's what happened, but I am saying what is conspicuous to me is that I believe I have seen compelling evidence that there were drones in the air. I believe I have seen compelling evidence that those drones moved in a way that is inconsistent with consumer drones.
Yes.
And I know that there are drones available that can wield a rifle that could plausibly have committed this crime, and that were they to have been used, you would get a much steeper angle.
Yes.
You wouldn't have the anomaly of this incredibly powerful round entering Charlie's neck and not coming out the other side.
And there was a military plane that we now know indisputably flew, the kind of plane that would have those kind of drones on them, dipped down to 200 feet above Provo, Utah, and so people are making... Twice.
And the explanation for it, not impossible, but the explanation for it, if I understand John Cullen's work correctly, is 2 missed landings. So you understand, Vivo, what the hypothesis is here.
Right. If look, because I'm trying to double check. Just as a matter of fact, if there was confirmation of military drones in the sky, if it were, it would certainly be something that you'd think about. It wouldn't necessarily even. On the one hand, it would confirm a shot and not an exploding mic, and then who else it would implicate. There would be no problem denying, as a matter of fact, that would be peculiar if it were proven to be true. So okay. I just want to. I'd love to get clear. I mean,
I'm not telling you. When you say conclusive, I'm imagining that conclusive is a bar that is by design going to be almost impossible to meet.
No, I mean,
I'm saying
I'll go with credible.
Persuasive evidence. I believe that there is persuasive evidence of drones in the air that they do not appear to be consumer drones, and that what do I know about how often planes descend 200 feet over
Twice.
Lake Utah twice. I don't know. Maybe that's a common behavior. Maybe I don't understand. Somebody's being trained. I don't know what it is, but it does at least create a hypothesis of the crime that you would imagine a functional FBI would rule out.
It would be better. These two particular claims seem to be more unverified than verified or even credible at this point. But I think everyone would agree, yes, if there were military drones in the sky at the time, at or about the time of the shooting, people would have legitimate questions to ask. I mean, then it's just a question of establishing whether or not the fact is true or the allegation is credible.
Okay, I'm satisfied with that.
There was one other thing which I was going to suggest with Jimmy.
The one guy who could have probably figured that out was Joe Kent, and he was stopped from investigating that by Cat.
Well, that's exactly what... Sorry, Jimmy, thank you. That's what I was going to come back to. This is where...
Marshalls, our buyers hustle 24/7, so you never have to compromise on quality or price. We're getting you a better deal because we believe that everyone deserves the good stuff.
I believe Joe Kent. The internet is so wild where I say I just want to know if Joe Kent actually told Candace Owens that there were 12 Israeli cell phones or cell phones from Israel detected on the ground. I just want to know if it's true because I've never heard Joe Kent say it. I've never heard anybody say it other than Candace, and I don't think there's any confirmation that there were 12 cell phones on the ground, even if that would be anomalous to the extent there's probably 20 Chinese students with cell phones on the ground. But when it comes to the shutting down of Joe Kent allegedly requesting Kash Patel to investigate a foreign nexus and Kash Patel saying no, and then everyone's like, that's your evidence of foreign nexus. And I go one step further. If there's no foreign nexus, but potentially the same type of domestic nexus that we've seen with Gretchen Whitmer, January 6th, possibly with Thomas Crooks, you don't want to be investigating for a foreign nexus if it's going to reveal a domestic nexus, or even the mere fact possibility that there were agents, CHS's, assets involved in any of these Discord chats that failed to intervene, just like they failed to intervene in that Draw Muhammad context in, what was it? It was in Texas. Let's say Garland, but where you knew that you had FBI agents tracking the terrorists before they, while they were en route to do their terrorism. People jump on the foreign nexus and don't necessarily appreciate if hypothetically you discovered it. This is where I think there could legitimately be a very real cover-up, that there were online Discord groups, chats, whatever, and that there were elements within there, domestic radicalizing people, and then one of them happens to go out and kill Charlie Kirk. That's where I can understand that it would be very suspicious if what Joe Kent is saying, and I do believe Joe Kent. I've met him. I know him. I've had him on the channel a couple of times. I think he's entirely credible. Whether or not he's too conspiratorial, I'd have zero trouble believing that, and that's where some transparency from the FBI in terms of what they did and did not do would be more than welcome, above and beyond of washing their hands and saying, well, we've given it to our state partners and we'll offer them whatever assistance. I want to know, did they investigate, identify, and clear each and every person who was involved in any online Discord group chat, whatever the hell, either with Tyler Robinson or Lance Twiggs? And we haven't had a confirmation on that. So again, it's just that people jump to the Israel nexus based on that when it could just as easily point to something much less exotic and much more plausible.
What would be a legitimate reason for Kash Patel stopping Joe Kent from investigating a foreign involvement? Because if he did, he would have investigated those drones and he could have said, oh, these are domestic, or these are foreign, or these came from there or from whatever. But he stopped that. So
we said
there's no legitimate reason for him to do that. Can you think of a legitimate reason?
No, I can't think of a legitimate reason. I can only think of an alternative explanation, which is they're telling Joe Kent, bug out, we're doing our investigation and we'll cover what needs to be done here, and we don't need to, we don't want you around here. I don't know if he was on the outs at that time with the administration, but I can imagine them saying, bugger off, Joe, and we're doing our own investigation, which I suspect is going to be their explanation.
Yeah, it's a weak explanation.
Oh, it's entirely weak.
Yeah, why wouldn't you want all the help you could get?
Well, not just that, and to provide clarity after the fact. Like, again, forget foreign involvement, because until you have the slightest shred of evidence, if there was, the basic confirmation, have they verified, investigated and cleared everybody involved in those Discord chats, other than the sweeping, like, oh yeah, it's all fine, or I don't even think they've said that. But again, legit. I mean, I'm not saying I don't believe that if Tyler Robinson did this, that he acted alone, because I think there's solid evidence of anomalies in terms of unsecured roof, assurances that it was secured, that parallel what I believe was a Lee Hop or a Me Hop of Butler, and that they didn't learn those lessons. What was it? Barely, not even a year later, a little over a year later. That's where you think like maybe they learned the wrong lessons from it. It's so just that easy.
Yeah, I don't think these are lessons not learned. I think these are intentional acts. It was intentional that they didn't monitor that Butler roof. In fact, people again in the crowd saw the guy up there. Who didn't see him up there was the Secret Service, was the state police, was the local police, was the security. Nobody saw him, except people did see him. And then the cops said they saw him 3 times in Butler. This is going back to Butler. They saw him 3 times inside a secured area with a backpack and a scope. And they asked, well, what did you do when you saw him? The cops said, oh, he just disappeared each time. He disappeared. Like, you mean like...
And they let Trump take the stage. That is where, these anomalies are just... it's impossible that you could have...
This many anomalies without a cover-up and a conspiracy.
No, it's
and they shut down that investigation too, under the idea, and the reason is like, oh, they think it was Iran. That he was told that they thought it was Iran. They wanted to put Iran was behind that assassination, and I'm like, well, if you thought it was Iran and not let's say Israel, why would you want to shut down the Wouldn't you want to prove conclusively that it was Iran who was trying to do that? So that also doesn't. So these things, none of these things make sense, even in a little bit.
No, I can't disagree with that, because I do think like it's not that the roof was yet again unsecured, that there were people posting that something big is going to happen beforehand, none of which points to Israel, and it's not for any preference. I mean, I'm more critical of Israel than most people. Just like you might want to believe something, and then you have to ask yourself even more questions to substantiate what you want to believe, if it fits what you do want to believe. But the advanced indications of foreknowledge were among these LGBT or whatever communities, chat groups. And so then the question then becomes, how did people have advance notice? Or are these just the standard signals that you get before any big event? And people always joke about, being Clinton or whatever. But that's why I sincerely think a lot of these more outlandish conspiracy theories give the administration all the justification they want to not address any of the...
One polluter wanted to stop a bill cracking down on emissions, so they paid Troy Jackson's lobbyist son a lot. And with Jackson in charge, the bill went up in smoke. Troy Jackson's family got paid. We got played. Coincidence or corruption?
Totally legitimate questions that have yet been answered. How the hell do people have advanced knowledge?
Let me say, I've been watching this conspiracy space for decades. There obviously have been quite a number of conspiratorial events where conspiracy hypotheses were initially dismissed, and then over time it becomes clear that the anomalies are actually telling you something. I've come to believe that I believe that the deep state exists, that it functions with impunity inside of our borders, that there are crimes that it can commit and be certain that it will not be held responsible for in any official way, and that requires certain things like the hobbling of the FBI, or I don't know if hobbling is even the right way to describe it, but the idea that a crime will never be properly investigated, that certain crimes are effectively untouchable, and that I believe that the folks who engage in this behavior have come to understand that they were too focused on committing perfect crimes that couldn't be detected, which never works out, and that what we are effectively now seeing is crimes are committed and then the battle takes place in the investigation space, in the online discussion space, that basically we can see that something has happened here. All three of us see too many anomalies in this case to think that the simple explanation is a lone gunman angry at Charlie Kirk over LGBTQ stuff. So the point is, I don't know if retcon is the right descriptor, retroactive continuity, but the idea that the crime is committed, certain things don't add up, but that can all be cleaned up in the discussion space. We can demonize people who are too focused on important elements. We can promote elements that aren't real and, fall apart on scrutiny. My sense is that Tyler Robinson's going to be convicted, right? He's going to be convicted even though the basis for reasonable doubt could be easily found if his defense was dedicated, well-resourced, and willing to go there.
So can I just also make the quick point that it's like if we were just arguing over the roof, or we were just arguing over the 30-06, or we were just arguing over no ambulance and what happened in that SUV and the fact that it was scrubbed and sold, or if we were just arguing over the paving over the crime scene, or if we were just arguing over the contradictory drone thing or the new drone, if we were just arguing, but it's no matter where you point your eyes in this case, there's a million anomalies, no matter what part of it. Right? So if it was just one part and we can't explain this thing, or we can't explain that one thing, or there's no thing, that no matter where you point your eyes, there's evidence of a cover-up and the opposite evidence of the way the narrative is put forth by the establishment. So no matter where you point your eyes, there's a million anomalies and things that don't make sense and actually point towards a conspiracy and that it was not Tyler Robinson.
Well, that's where you're making one big ass leap. I mean, first of all, there will always be anomalies when you scrutinize any crime scene, period. So, you'll always find anomalies, especially if you operate from the basis that I don't trust anything they say. And so I'm going to go and scrutinize O.J. Simpson's prosecution, even though I think he's guilty, and you'll still find anomalies. And they might have actually, or at least there is hard evidence, they framed what might have been a guilty man and allowed him to get off. But, to both of these points, the theory of the case is that Tyler took the shot. I guess the official narrative is he took it alone, and I think that's where most people will say, I don't. If he took the shot, I don't believe he took it alone. I could be open to the idea that it was Lance Twiggs on the roof or somebody else, but the theory is to get past he was shot from the roof. People hang their hats on a 30-06 doesn't behave that way, and I want to come back to this, Brett, because you mentioned it earlier. That the bullet broke up in an anomalous way. The argument is that it didn't. The argument, now that we know that it was a core-locked Remington, which are known for fragmenting badly, which is why people don't use them to hunt, because you don't want to be picking out fragments of metal. The argument is that it didn't actually fragment in a totally anomalous way. And I appreciate Rob O'Neill, the guy who killed Bin Laden. It's like he thinks now he might be the authority as to how bullets behave because he's killed however many people. It's sort of like Jeffrey Dahmer becoming an authority on chefs because he's eaten several humans. It's first of all, even when he said that, he was still parroting Candace Owens' talking points and literally referencing her. So, and he's refused to elaborate or go anywhere to have a fleshed out, meaningful discussion, and has actually walked it back and said, "Look, I'm just saying, based on the video, it didn't look like bullets operate that way." When there are people who hunt for years, and you can go back right this way, when you said it's anomalous that a 30-06 does this, it's not. You have Martin Luther King who got shot in the face and it hit his chin bone. And then people say, okay, well, it hit his chin bone, so that's a stronger bone. Then you've got another guy, I forget who it was, gets shot, there's documented cases. Then
Susan Collins was the deciding vote to advance Donald Trump's Medicaid cuts. Thousands more Mainers are expected to lose their Medicaid coverage. Hospitals and clinics are shutting down. Tell Susan Collins to stop voting for Trump's healthcare cuts. Red Robin's Big Yum Deals, starting at just $9.99, come with a bottomless side and beverage. Bottomless sides and beverages. Sounds like a good deal. Red Robin, yum.
Cernovich goes and looks back in history at Reddit boards where they talk about hunting and how the bullet didn't exit the animal. And then people have to pivot, okay, well now it's a deer, they have thicker skin and yada, yada, yada. My argument is, I don't know how bullets typically behave, and I know that all bullets don't behave the same way. I know that there are a lot of people with tremendous hunting experience who say this happens, whether or not it's more often than not, it's not anomalous for it to happen in the first place.
It's not impossible, is what it is.
No, but it's not even unlikely.
I think it's unlikely.
Very unlikely.
I think it's unlikely, and I think the point is the bullets typically behave typically. This one behaved atypically, and the question is, putting bounds on how unusual this was is important in determining whether or not the official theory of the crime is likely to be accurate.
Atypically, and again, we're within realms. 15% of the time, whatever. When people said a bullet never does this, and then you bring up the Martin Luther King, and then they say, oh, well, they say one of two things, by the way, and this is how you know you're trying to pin an egg to a wall. They say, oh, well, that hit him in the jawbone, so that's a different type of bone. Or they literally say to me, you believe the official narrative with Martin Luther King as well. He wasn't shot with a 30-06 either. And so my bottom line is I'm not a ballistics expert at all. I've listened to experts on both sides. I've listened to Chris Martinson. I had him on the channel, and he made what I think was the biggest concession ever, which is I said, he says, hypothetically, it could have been a fouled round if the rifle hadn't been properly maintained, had a foul bore, as they said, and the bullet was tumbling. I was like, we're talking about a 100-year-old rifle. Now we know it's with pretty crappy Remington core lock.
But they can't connect that rifle to the bullet.
Well, nor can they.
It was probably never even fired.
Well, that's a big leap.
And the bullet was soft. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
No, just say they did not match. They could not match the bullet to the rifle. That's the case in the majority of gun crimes, from what I understand. So that's not anomalous at all. So long as they did definitively not identify. And again, I appreciate the balance of the beyond a reasonable doubt. More often than not, they can't trace the bullet because it doesn't have the fingerprint of the barrel, marks and whatever. So more often than not, they can't. But that doesn't mean that it didn't come from a rifle. It didn't mean it didn't come from that one. And in as much as I say, you have experts, people who have done this their entire lives, saying it's not possible, and others saying it's entirely reasonable. And I say, I've been a lawyer. I was a lawyer for 13 years. When you have two experts, and one saying it's impossible, the other one saying it's entirely possible, albeit less likely than not, or less likely than the alternative. I mean, a judge is going to come and say, well, I don't know which expert to believe anymore, but I'm satisfied in thinking it's not impossible if a number of experts say it's possible, and you have a history of people on Reddit, subreddits, saying, I shot a deer and the bullet didn't come out. A 30-06.
I don't think possible is the correct metric.
Right.
Okay? Possible, yes. Bullets do very anomalous things, but they don't usually. The effort that has been put into recreating this shot is substantial. They don't typically do this. Is that decisive in and of itself? Of course not. But it's not the only anomaly. As Jimmy points out, this feels like a Potemkin explanation.
Yes.
Where if you look where they tell you to look, they've got an explanation for each thing. Here's where he was at this moment. Here's how he got there. Here's where he assembled the rifle. If you look only where they ask you to look, it makes sense. If you look anywhere else, it looks like a set, right? You're backstage, you're looking at scaffolding, the building isn't a building, it's only a front wall. And And at the same moment, we lack the investigatory apparatus that you would expect to be looking at all of those anomalies. And if all of those anomalies are just the normal anomalies that would accompany any complicated environment, then they can all be ruled out. But we have too many anomalies here for that to make sense, right?
Well, but you're confounding anomalies overall versus anomalies for the cause of death. I mean, we're talking about one thing right now. The other anomalies would explain the cause of death. But when we're talking about whether or not it was a bullet to the neck, I'm not convinced that there are that many anomalies, other than people saying a 30-06 doesn't behave that way.
Hold on, bullet to the neck is consistent with the drone.
A Dead River Company showing up for our customers.
We have to hate people. We emphasize hate, and therefore you don't talk to people because they are the devil or the evil and whatever. So you don't talk to the evil. This is something we never had. This is kind of vocabulary or terminology that we didn't have during the Cold War. Nobody was saying that Leonid Brezhnev or Gorbachev or whoever, Chernenko and Opov, nobody said it was the evil. Because we had, parallel to what happened in Afghanistan or in Africa or in some other place in the world, we still had negotiation process. Even when the Soviets downed Boeing, Korean Boeing, the KL-007, and it was downed by the Soviet
Well, I have to.
force.
So then what I'm saying is the anomalous thing is not the bullet to the neck. Now you're saying, well, it wasn't a 30-06, it was a 223 from a drone, just entertaining your theory.
Not a 223.
Essentially that was.
Or another bullet. But then what? Then in all of this master class of a conspiracy, they used the wrong bullet in the rifle to match what would happen to the neck?
Well, I have to
And
tell you,
they
this
didn't
is,
match
this
the
is one of the
bullet?
things that troubles me is, to the extent that you have a conspiratorial explanation, it's weird that certain things that should be easy to have conspired to make sure they agreed don't seem to. So that's one of the things that bugs me about the whole space, is that the official narrative doesn't add up to me in light of the anomalies, and the anomalies don't paint a clear picture of, if he was going to be a patsy, you should at least have the correct weapon involved in the crime, and you suspiciously don't. So I have the sense that something always fails to go right and then gets taken care of in the retroactive continuity phase, where to the extent that you can dissuade people to look at things that aren't real, you dissuade them, and to the extent that people insist on looking at things that are real, you demonize them, something like that.
So, just getting back to what you said earlier, the angle doesn't match up from the Losi building, and so there's that lends to being from a drone if it was a bullet. Also, I saw a testimony, I could be interpreting it incorrectly, but I saw the testimony of the bullet. She said that there were 8 fragments, 1 got lost, they can only really use 4, and she talked about how the fragments didn't match up to a 30-06 bullet, the size of it. I saw Baron Coleman break this down. And so that even if you, so there's that's against it being a 30-06, but also, correct me if I'm wrong, they were trying to push the narrative that it was a frangible bullet. Now we know it wasn't, and that now they're saying it was a soft tip, which to an amateur, that sounds like, oh, it's soft, so it probably would break up. It's the exact opposite. A soft tip bullet is actually there to make a bigger explosion inside the neck, which would lend it to, it would have actually blown a drive-through window in the back of his neck. And it didn't. So the fact that, so correct me if go ahead, take it wherever you want.
Well, I look, my understanding, I had on Phoenix ammunition, and then people are going to say, well, he's a biased source, and what does he know? He just
that plays into people bring up MK
The core
Ultra
lock
stuff.
is supposed to mushroom
It's
on impact.
fake. It
It's
was
supposed to
soft.
slow
They're
down-
not really
slow
being
down,
beaten.
but
We're just
mushroom
making the
is
psycho-Karens
the
believe that,
expansion.
so they snap and you get a
And
good
the one thing
show.
from what I've been told
gotta get
about
rid
these
of
bullets
those
is that they're
problems.
not good, and so instead of mushrooming, they do
I mean,
oftentimes
granted.
break up.
Granted,
But
do some
I
of
don't
them
think there's
deserve
any.
it.
I mean, again, if you,
Yeah, we can't
the
have
idea that
that.
the angle is off is
No, it's getting a lot of
the
children
conspiracy
killed
theory
in
to get away from the fact that the
children
bullet
playing
came from the
children's
Mosey
games.
room. And the sequence of thought that you have to go through to do that is to say, yeah, people heard the shot come from the Mosey room. I was watching people live streaming. They immediately panned right over to the roof.
It's a very,
Other
very,
people
very
misidentified because there's echo. So you say the people who misheard that the shot had to have been the decoy so that it came from another spot at a different angle. In which case he was still shot. And then it couldn't have come from the 30-06 rifle because those bullets never behave that way. Again, if there were the bullet breaking up and not being able to be traced to the rifle is different than saying it was not a 30-06, and I think it's the former, not the latter, Jimmy. And if it were the latter, people would be singing, screaming at the top of their lungs in defense because it would be kind of a big deal. What it said, the Daily Mail mischaracterized it. It said they cannot trace it to the bullet, but that's the case in the majority of these types of incidents.
Yeah, I take that as not a significant anomaly. The fact that you can't positively match it to the gun doesn't necessarily mean anything to me, and I think that was overly focused on because, as I pointed out earlier, those who are exploring conspiracies tend to take anything that leads in their direction and credit it as true and important, where some of it just isn't.
Today,
So
is a very, very, very fine house with two cats in the yard. Life used to be so hard. Now everything is easy because of you.
By declaring that Iran was
I am slowly going crazy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Switch. Slowly am I going crazy. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Switch. I am slowly going crazy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Switch. Let's get the rhythm of the hot dog. Let's get the rhythm of the hot dog. Put it all together and what do you got?
maintaining this climate of hate.
There's an alligator in the elevator. I can't believe what I see. There's an alligator in the elevator, and his eyes are looking at me.
Not just
Alligator, please push. Number 5. I'm going up to the 5th floor. Would you like to have lunch with me?
like teenagers. We have discussed that many times already.
Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees. Look at these. Texaco, Texaco, all the way to Mexico, where we learn to do the tricks. Give a high kick. Turn around, touch the ground, get out of town. Please come back. Sit on attack. Ouch! Please don't look. Spell your name.
Led the way forward, enacting historic bipartisan reforms that made us safer. Susan saved 250,000 Maine jobs. She protects access to quality health care, and she delivered the Social Security Fairness Act, boosting the incomes of 25,000 Maine retirees. America's most bipartisan senator, always working for Maine.
I would like to talk a little bit about how the people at TPUSA have completely flipped on Charlie Kirk's narrative about everything, and have pretended that he would support the Iran
So
war.
anyways, yeah, a lot of people and investigators
and
they are well aware
as he was moving
of
away.
some of the Charlie Kirk lines and associations with his sick fucking widow. Doesn't even deserve to be called that. No, that's a evil, horrible person that set Charlie up. Yeah, they did. Oh, they helped to aid and abet some sick motherfuckers all along the way, going back to the grooming. Were they groomed too? Did people Ursula them together? And one was just nastier than the other, huh? They like the nasty ones. Yeah, that's how they get away with those kind of setups. It takes a really nasty, evil person. They're not doing anything wrong. They had good intentions, according to their fucking sludge mind consciousness beliefs. They had good intentions. From there, sick, fucking nasty perspective. You people understand that? It's really fucking easy to understand it when you look at the connections with some of those people who organize and set things up. From turning point people, not all of them, as you can see, usually the ones that are the poster people who you would associate to those things have nothing to do with what a lot of the fucking slugs and sponsors and nasty fucking journalists and people that they hire. Bring them on board, show them the ropes. Yeah, we'll show them the fucking ropes. Nasty fucking people. I know, see, well, that's how you survive. When people go along with it and be like, yeah, we'll show them the ropes. Okay, come on board, let's go. And this is what we do over here in this room, and this is the copy room, and over here, and this is where the clock is. Yeah, no, we don't play those fucking games. Get the fuck out of here. That's why we're on disability and have to mooch off of you nice, hardworking people. Anyways, yeah, do you get the fucking point yet? So anyways, I really hope the proper authorities here in Augusta, Maine do what they're supposed to do to help our children that are here in the hands of sick, murderous pedophiles who tried to kill us. That's okay, we don't got to talk about it, but all you trying to justify it has sure helped others see just how sick and fucking demented you are. Pack your shit and get the fuck out of here. Proper authorities need to get our children away from those sick people. Much love, health, and peace to you all. We are going to finish our water, do some stretches, work on our scarf, might read a book. We kind of want to start the Bible from the beginning. The Holy Bible. Someone we pressed said we start that one from the beginning, and I said, well, we are doing a full read on the Scandinavian literature. We're starting, what is it, Ludwig Helberg today? Ludwig Helberg. But, I don't know, we could start the Bible. We want to do a full read on that. Oh man, you know what? I'll give it a go. We'll see how far we get. Right now, what better time is now? When you got what it takes, why wait? Anyways. Well, there's a line. Larry! Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You know what? I can try to not say anyways again. For some reason, it just passes through every once in a while. Anyways. Hey, good morning. Alright, so someone wants to start the Holy Bible from the beginning, huh? What page is marked? I'm not sure. Let's see. That's page 696. Man does not know what is to come, chapter 9. I think we read that one last time. Alexa, play some classical reading music. Mm-hmm. Whoa, that one was really... Come on, that's not fair. There's not even a blue line going. How am I supposed to follow the blue line if there's no blue line? Hold on. There's really actually nothing on this screen. I'm just making all this up as we go. But you can imagine how that would be a fun, good test. Okay, ready? Go. Follow the pong. Ping pong ball. Pong ball. Ping pong ball. Is that what it's called? Pong ball. Pong ping ball. Sometimes the dyslexia just takes over. What? It's not a cowlick. A cowlick is straight, isn't it? Okay, ready? Follow the pong. Why isn't it moving? Oh, is that part of the test? Squidward on a chair. kind of overcasty this morning. You're welcome. Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to start from the beginning, huh? Okay. This is Holy Bible with the Deepest Sympathy, LBEW. Vocal 567. I don't know. It might be jelly or something. I haven't washed it off. The heart hath its own memory, like the mind, and in it are inspired the precious keepsakes. Longfellow. The Shepherd's Psalm. I'm not trying to be offensive. Why do some people... I'm not trying to be condescending. Why do some people say that? Is it because I feel like I'm all of a sudden kind of being a little more astute and soft-spoken? Right. The Shepherd's Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Psalm 23. A lot of people like reading each day from different books just for... It's almost kind of like a marriage. Yeah, just to bring up different topics and appreciation for life, to remember, like the sign of the cross. An appreciation for life, water, each other, your job, the grass, whatever it is. There's so many things. It's all around you. Okay, so here in this spot, you can put a special picture. Another special picture for memory spot. And then our treasured memories, loving thoughts of events in the life of our family. There's some pages there to do that, and then there's a certificate that blank and blank were united in holy matrimony on the blank day of some year. This is 1900, and this must have been written before the year 2000. Wife's family tree, husband's family tree has little slots there so you can... It's good for if you have children too. Yeah, I mean, some people would rather you not know, I guess. Then you have more of our treasured memories in verse, church record, a brief record of memorable occasions, has an event and date section, in remembrance of deaths. Words of life. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me hath everlasting life. I am that bread of life. John 6:47-48. I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. John 8:12. I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved, and shall go in and out, and find pasture. John 10:9. I I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. John 10:11. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me, and I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish, neither shall any man pluck them out in my hand. Well, oh, my sandals? You like them? Thank you. I have them right here. I really like these sandals too. They're very comfortable. What? Oh, yeah, I hear you. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father, but by me. John 14:6. These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. The New American Bible, translated from the original languages with critical use of all that the ancient sources, and the Revised New Testament, translated from the original languages with critical use of all the ancient sources, and the Revised New Testament, authorized by the Board of Treasures of the Confraternity of Christian Doctrine, and approved by the Administrative Committee Board of the National Conference of Catholic Bishops and the United States Catholic Conference. NAB, American Bible Company, P.O. Box 141500, Nashville, Tennessee 37214. Copyright 1987, Thomas Nielsen Incorporated, April 25th, 1969. Looks like different copies going back. This one is 1991. Copyright 1991. This is a 1969 version. All rights reserved. No part of the New American Bible may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, including photocopying, recording, or by any information and retrieval system without permission in writing from the copyright owner. Does that make me crazy? For the faithful in all English-speaking countries, the publication of the New American Bible represents a notable achievement. Its pages contain a New Catholic version of the Bible in English, along with illustrations and explanations that facilitate the understanding of the text. For more than a quarter of a century, members of the Catholic Biblical Association of America, sponsored by the Bishops' Committee of the Confraternity of Christian Doctrine, have labored to create this new translation of the scriptures from the original languages or from the oldest extent from in which the text exists. In so doing, the translators have carried out the directive of our predecessor, Pius XII, in his famous encyclical Divinio Afflante Spiritu, and the decree of the Second Vatican Council, Dea Verbum, which prescribed that up-to-date and appropriate translations be made in the various languages by preference from the original text of the sacred books, and that with the approval of church authority, these translations may be produced in cooperation with our separated brethren, so that all Christians may be able to use them. The holy task of spreading God's word to the widest possible readership has a special urgency today,
Despite all his material achievements, man still struggles with the age-old problems of how to order his life for the glory of God, for the welfare of his fellows, and the salvation of his soul. Therefore, we are gratified to find in this new translation of the Scriptures a new opportunity for men to give themselves to frequent reading of and meditation on the living Word of God. In its pages, we recognize his voice. We hear a message of deep significance for every one of us. Through the spiritual dynamism and prophetic force of the Bible, the Holy Spirit spreads his light and his warmth over all men, in whatever historical or sociological situation they find themselves. Big one, huh? On all who have contributed to this translation and all who seek in its pages the sacred teaching of the promise of salvation of Jesus Christ our Lord, we gladly bestow our paternal apostolic blessing from the Vatican, September 18th, 1970.
Some kind of coin or something.
Right, so whatever situation they find themselves, the Word of God, like we said, you can read a page out of this every day if you like, as a remembrance, or just something to do together, some subject matter, different words or history. Just look up a word origin maybe together. Sharing and just exercising the mind, doing things that help dexterity. And then when you have people that want to sit in and say, no, you shouldn't color or read that book or do this. No, you got to read this book and do it at this time. No, this church. No, those people. Yeah, when people start doing that shit, you fucking lose me and you can get the fuck out of my face, okay? We're sick of that shit and you need to knock it the fuck off. Anyways, preface to the New American Bible and Old Testament. Right, so I mean, it's important we keep those things in checks and balance, right? Because say the Word of God, where you want to wash your hands, cleanliness is next to godliness. Yeah, we all agree on that. Nope, don't let anybody tell you what to do. You're free. You do what you want, right? So it's that kind of stupidity and arrogance we try to teach and do kind of examples in improv classes or just examples, talking like this openly and freely without being afraid of offending anybody so they can't claim victim funding. I mean, that's getting old, isn't it? For real, you sick fucking nasty people. Right, so anyways, I really hope the proper authorities here in Augusta, Maine do what they're supposed to do to help our children in the hands of these sick, murderous pedophiles. It's absolutely sick, disgusting, and disturbing what's been going on here for years, and it needs to be addressed. Anybody have the guts or the balls to do it? Are you gonna be the one? I know so many of us with these cases over the years, we see some have the guts and the balls. I know, and then sometimes they get killed, or we see murder-suicides when the fucking punks and nasty abusers see that people at a level of voices that matter, as opposed to retards like us who are just conspiracy theorists, and you shouldn't listen to them. Take your medication. You better take your medication properly. You see what they do to people. Take your medication. Right, so we see what that's caused, right? And you can't deny it, and they continue to try to deny it and try to say, see, that's why we got to get them medicated earlier. And we played that game, and that's gotten pretty bad and sick and psycho, where we have over-medicated psychos hitting 11-year-olds in the head with a plate because their sister said they said something racist. Okay, you motherfuckers are sick and demented, and you need to stop your fucking bullshit. You fucking Jew bastards. Do you understand me? Goddamn Indian givers. Much love, health, and peace to you all. I really hope the proper authorities address the facts and concerns here soon. You're welcome. Yes, thank you.